Boom and boom, we're live.
Mm. Hey, what's up, everybody? How you doing? It's your man J. Kev and Leif Taylor here. Just having another open and hopefully authentic and hopefully edutaining conversation revolving around all things health, wealth, relationships, and happiness. What's up with you, Leif?
Shoot, nothing much, man. I'm just trying to get this stuff shared right now because I keep forgetting that we got to share
Got
it
you.
everywhere
No problem.
to get people
Hey,
on.
well, today for a discussion, I just want to talk about how
Oh, yeah.
important it is that we take the time to really kind of just vet the information that we have constantly streaming at us for coming from all angles in our lives. And I guess just what's a couple of points has kind of gotten me thinking about this. Um, a couple of points is that, like, I think last week you sent me an article talking about uh hold up. Let me see if I can find this article. I got it right here.
Okay.
I'm just gonna try to find the title.
You said I sent
Invisible
it to you?
yeah,
Okay.
invisible manipulators of your mind.
Oh, yeah,
And,
yeah, yeah.
and you know that the article wasn't anything new to me, but it was just a reminder of how there are social behavioral engineers that are employing social psychological tactics on us at pretty much a lot of the times. It's the behavioral techniques that are being employed by governments and private corporations do not appeal to our reason. And what they do appeal to is our emotions,
Yep.
because it's emotions is that's what moves and motivates and drives us. Emotion. Emotion, feelings that put you in motion. So, in that article, it just goes through a couple of things, um, like some various techniques that are used on populations by governments and by corporations to help move us and get us to behave in certain ways. And that was an interesting read. It's a pretty lengthy read, but it's a pretty good read as far as getting a handle on some of the techniques that are being used against us and how effective they are. And going along with that, I was thinking about some of the previous live streams that I've watched over the years with their respect. The Nudge, I think it's called the Nudge Conference. That's what they call it.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with that one.
But I wasn't either. It was a fairly new one that I don't know if it's still around, but it was popular at one point, from with me anyway. And it was just a bunch of psychologists, social psychologists, sociologists, and other behavior engineers up talking about ways that the tactics and things they were using in their positions to help government and help corporations achieve their agendas and get some things moving along when it comes to getting us the consumer, or the people, the ruled over to do certain things and act in certain ways.
Yep.
So that was one thing that kind of got me, kind of seeded the idea of today's discussion. And then another one was, an article that came up today. It's a New York Times article. Let me see if I can find it real quick. I think I might have. Shoot, I'll find it real quick. Hold up.
This right here, get ready for a vaccine information war.
Yeah, and I didn't want to focus on the subject as far as vaccines, but it was just an interesting article, just speaking to how in the article when you read it, it talks about how those who are for vaccinations need to get more organized and more strategic and more mobilized against those who are anti vaxxers. And it
Yeah.
was just interesting that you see this in, like, a paper like the New York Times and other places too, where it's supposed to be journalism. I thought journalism was about reporting, you know, stories and news and trying to be objective, but it's pretty much in the open that this is an information war. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, did nobody told me that this was an information war, where where information is being weaponized in order to achieve certain agendas. So, that was just one article that kind of seeded this thought too. And then another one was I sent you the link to a discussion at the World Economic Forum among some people talking about, that right there, talking about the power of narratives and the power of how important it is that even at the World Economic Forum, talking about economy and things, dealing with economics, how it's important that narratives are shaped and narratives are put together in such a way that will help move the world economy in a certain direction. We joked before we got on how in the course of that conversation, somebody makes mention of story building, and the guy replies with, "Well, that's what journalists are for. That's what journalism is for. It's a story build." And I'm like, hold up, wait a minute. I thought journalism was about reporting facts and trying to be subjective and trying to give all sides of a perspective, as many perspectives as you can of a story. That was another thing that kind of got me going on in that direction.
Yeah, the thing that was interesting about that conversation was, I'm posting it so you guys can see it, is they were talking about how do you counteract that information, right? How do you counteract false narratives? And this is where I guess the average everyday person falls prey, is because you have to constantly put out counterbalancing information. And that's extremely difficult to do, especially when, they have tons of distribution, outlets for their information that keeps funneling through, especially from a platform standpoint that, the platform can just keep looping it through on their own without the need for people. Whereas you need people on the ground, boots on the ground, sharing the information, getting it to as many people as possible, just to counteract a fraction of what goes out.
Yeah. And real quick, before we go any further, the question came to my mind is, how do you counteract the flood of information coming towards somebody? How do you vet through that information?
Okay. So you asking me, or you asking the audience, or are you going to answer
the audience? I'm asking the audience. I'm asking you. I'm asking the audience. Like, what are some tactics, some things that you've employed in your life to help you get to the bottom of things as best as you can? And I think one thing for me has been to try to go as close to the source as one possibly can, and try to get better at doing that. For example, I can remember when I was in college, how there would be speakers that would come talk to us on certain subjects.
Yep.
And some of the subjects would be outlandish. They would make outlandish claims at the time. And some of the things I kind of just listened, but I didn't believe. And then over the course of time, I learned to not only read the books and go hunt down and research some of the information that was given to me, but also try to go to the horse's mouth, so to speak, which, for example, watching live streams of the World Economic Forum, not a worldwide non-governmental organization, watching some of the movers and shakers and people in influential positions, actually watch them say and listen to them say the things that they say, is kind of like just going straight to the horse's mouth. And I know that's becoming even more difficult today, with how easy it is to manipulate information as digitally now. They can make me say things and do things that I never said or did with a lot of the technology. So these are things that we have to be aware of and mindful of, and kind of keep at the forefront when it comes to our research and when it comes to kind of getting to the bottom of things, so we can make good, wise, practical decisions in our everyday life that's going to help us stay healthier, wealthier, and happy in our relationships and happy in life.
So one way that I think about that question is, how do you find, I guess, the right answer amongst all the information that's flowing? Is sometimes, like, I guess one way to do that is pick a lane. Okay. And what I mean by that is, instead of trying to figure out everything, find specifically one thing and dive deep on that, right?
Yeah.
And so because again, there's so much information that's output, and if you don't funnel the kind of information you listen to begin with, or that you take in, whether you're reading or listening, then it's going to be too much for you to research all of it. You just can't. It's just impossible. That's why they're specialists, right?
Yeah.
So one way is just to drill down deep on one specific thing. So okay, so say you care, say it's healthcare. Okay, you want to drill down on healthcare, and you want to find specific things within the healthcare. Who's passing the laws, who's doing this. What organizations are backing the bill. So on and so forth. And you just drill down in that, and that'll give you some answers. And then the curiosity of that will lead you to other areas of information.
Yep.
And so going back to our discussion last week, we talked about, the benefit of community, to where, okay, if I'm drilling deep down on this particular issue, like, for example, I'm talking with somebody that has an expertise specifically in one area. So instead of me doing the research and I know they have already done it, I just tap them, right? And so I just go to them and get the information directly from them, because they've already vetted a lot of it that would take me forever to do. They've already condensed it down, and I can read on that information. And so you can do the same thing in terms of any one of these subjects.
And what's one thing that makes a particular person stand out in a certain area when it comes to reaching out to somebody as an authoritative?
The domain expert.
Yeah.
Well, one is it's track record, right? Just knowing somebody and just knowing their background and their track record in a particular field. So that's one thing. Two is their enthusiasm for that particular topic, right? Speaking of which, the invisible manipulators thing that I sent you, this right here, I posted it. I posted that link in the chat as well. But anyway, actually, I wasn't planning on relating that. But anyway, when I read this article, it made me pick up the book, the Audible book anyway, of Mastery by Robert Greene.
Yes. Right? So where did you pick that up? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what I've been listening to over the past few days, because I'd finished some other books. So I was like, well, let me dive deep into this, because again, when I started thinking about these different theories, these marketing theories and all of these different things, I was like, okay, how do you master? That was my train of thought, is like, how do you master stuff, right? How do you become the one person in the entire earth that does a specific thing? And so I picked up that book, and in going back to, how do you find that one person, that domain expert, is again going back to the enthusiasm. It's something that somebody has an innate knack for, right? They have a knack for this information. Things that are extremely difficult to you are just, they enjoy it. So I seek out those people. I got a wide range of friends, and so when I'm talking to people, I know who has a certain enthusiasm or a certain, passion for a particular field. So I'll reach out to that particular person on any given topic. And so that's one way to find it out. Another thing in terms of vetting information is quit taking in so much. Tune out. Yes. That's another option as well, is just tune out, because, we talked about it today. We did like a Coined group meeting today, talking about, getting back to the old ways. And sometimes just in terms of, information or even knowledge, figuring out where you fit in the grand scheme of things, you just have to take a pause and step back and figure out, okay, why am I taking in this information? Why is this important to me? Why do I need to know it? Am I wasting my time even listening to it? I know lately, relating back to, you talked about the vaccines and the misinformation and all of that. Lately, for me, when it comes to the whole COVID stuff, in my house, my wife is the domain expert on all of that stuff. No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
She really is. She keeps track of the laws. She keeps track of all the different, the economic things. And myself, I've just backed away from it completely to where I don't care. And I'm not saying that from the standpoint that it's not important. I'm saying that, okay,
That's
I know
the
I need to
beauty of
focus
community.
on, I need to focus on specific things so I can move forward. Because if I keep trying to figure out who's doing what and all of this, I won't be working. I won't be working on my own game plans and all of this kind of stuff. So that's an option as well in terms of vetting information. Sometimes you just leave the information alone altogether, because every bit of information is not necessarily for your benefit or for your good. So yeah, so sometimes you just need to take a step back.
Yeah. So having a good, clear, we talked about in the past, having a good, clear sense about what your objective of the day, what your overall objective is in life, period.
Keep
You
wrinkling my forehead.
know. So yeah, just having an overall clear objective about what's really important to you as far as moving some agendas ahead in all the categories of your life. That's going to help you like skim away the fat, like you said, trim down to the things that really stick out or that's really important to you. You know, I don't need to know about basket weaving. You know, it's just not something that that's really on my radar right now as far as the things I'd like to have happen and achieve in my life. So just knowing what to take in, like you said, knowing what not to take in is very important. Cool.
Yeah. Also, real quick, while you trying to figure out your next thought is,
Mhm.
uh, just going back to the whole mastery thing and something that you just mentioned is figure out what your calling is in terms of the direction of your life, right?
Uh,
And I say that, and I'm actually reflecting on some of the conversation we had earlier today in Coinda. Um, Figure out where your calling is from the standpoint of everything is not for you. And this is not even about misinformation.
yeah,
This is really about,
purpose.
yeah, your come up, so to speak, right?
Yeah.
'Cause everybody, especially now, is looking for a way to come up. Circumstances have hit everybody in a weird kind of way. Well, not everybody, but a lot of the majority of Americans, right?
Most of
Yeah.
them, yeah, most of the
And
world.
yeah, have hit everybody in a weird kind of way, and they're trying to figure out, okay, how can I, thrive, survive, and all those different things. But the problem that I see, especially when it comes to interest, when it comes to information, is sometimes we're always trying to scramble to do what somebody else is doing and not necessarily focus on what's best for us in the grand scheme of things. And
Yes.
and what I mean by that is, for example, I'm sitting here, I was like, you know what? I'm gonna focus on selling cars. That's what I'm gonna do. And I think I can make a lot of money selling cars. And then my man Jay Kev comes along like, hey man, this delivery racket is where the money's at. So I'll be like, oh, you know what? I'm gonna get into
It is where the
delivery.
money's
Forget
at.
them cars, yeah. Forget those cars. I wouldn't pour that no way. So I start, getting into the delivery racket. Then somebody comes along, hey man, this, these balloons are like the new joint now, man. Red
Yeah.
balloons are like where it's at. You can make a ton of money. Oh, so then I jump from delivering to going to red balloons, and all the time I'm never picking up traction anywhere. And all the time I'm constantly fleeting, trying to figure it out. And then when things get extremely bad, I'm still behind. Right. And so one thing that I admonish people to do is really try to figure out where your life's passion really is. Because if you can figure that out, if you can stay there, if you can figure out how to utilize your life's passion and monetize it, and not even necessarily monetize in terms of money, but figure out where value is in it for other people,
Man,
right?
yeah, it's hitting on the head.
Yeah, so if
Yeah.
you can figure out where that value is for other people, for you, and that's not to say that you don't, like, okay, this may be my passion, but until I get there, it's not to say I don't take a side job or anything like that. What I'm saying is, if you keep chasing things, you'll always stay hungry, right? It's like the old
Too many
the
rabbits.
yeah, too many rabbits, chasing all the rabbits, and you don't eat anything. You just stay slim, right? And so make sure that you figure out, which rabbit you want to eat, so to speak, and focus on that. And if there's some opportunity for other rabbits, then they'll come. It really will. That's why, like now, in terms of myself, and that's not to say I'm doing everything 100% correct, but if it doesn't interest me, I don't bother doing it. If I know that long term, I don't want to sustain it, I can't sustain it, then I don't even waste my time personally, because I know it's just gonna deter me. It's just gonna set my time back further in terms of achieving what I want to achieve down a certain path. And so the reason why I said that, because in the talk today about Coinda and figuring out what the group needs and those kinds of things, they talk about people trying to grab, get the bag, and they go and all of that kind of stuff. But again, if you start chasing down every scenario and seeing somebody like, oh man, they doing it big, they doing blah blah blah, you got to realize that before Facebook was around, these people were putting in their working time. And so just because you see somebody on top now, you miss the years that they put into that business or that venture or whatever. And so what may seem like it happened overnight to you is really a lifetime of work and effort for them. So don't get caught up in that, and again, I like to look at marketing. I like to look at all those kinds of things. And so, and this goes back into the narrative and vetting information and all of that kind of stuff. When you see somebody that's successful, really unearth why they are successful, because a lot of times you're misinformed, or you're just caught up in the spotlight of their life. Prime example, somebody I was talking to earlier, they were talking about the whole Zuckerberg dream, building something in your garage and all of that kind of stuff. There's like, yeah, but you got to keep in mind, he had a $365,000 loan that was given to him, right?
By In-Q-Tel?
No, I think it was just his parents. I think his parents just dropped him some bread, right? And so, but if you miss that information, you think that it's just going to be easy. Oh, I just come up with this great idea and it's going to take off and I'm going to be rich and all of that kind of stuff. And it doesn't work quite that way, because again, we're not taking in the full information. So we're misinformed and we're misdirected based on that misinformation. Go ahead, Kia. What you looking up?
Well, I had a whole bunch of stuff going through my head when you was talking. Like when you were talking about work ethic.
Yeah.
For some reason, E40 came to my head.
timer.
Because, well, I think it was because a while back I listened to him on what radio show was that with Charlemagne and
Breakfast Club.
Yeah, Breakfast Club. I listened to him on there. And I was like, E40 still around? It's like E40 is putting in work, mad. I mean, another level.
Yeah, he was around before we were in college.
Yeah. So, and he's still doing work. And when you were talking about work ethic, that's who came to my mind. But also in Mastery, Robert Greene talks about the same thing, talking about the work ethic that a lot of people, prominent people, have and had. And right now I'm thinking about when he talks about Napoleon and how Napoleon prepared for war was he would, lock himself up in a room and study, battle plans, study every nook and cranny, every possible scenario for hours, and just geek out on it. And he talks about other prominent people too, and the amount of work that really goes into achieving and sustaining a level that a lot of people don't reach for whatever reason. Another person's coming to mind is Kobe Bryant. As far as work ethic.
Yeah, but here's the thing, though. Even going back into that, just think of it like a diet, right? If you hate Brussels sprouts, eating a gallon of Brussels sprouts is going to be the worst thing you could probably ever do. It's going to take you forever. Whereas if you love them, then it's like, oh man, I do this every day. It's no big deal, right? And so that's the thing. That's the reason why passion plays a large part in that. some people just have discipline. If you grow up in a country, like I'm thinking China specifically, right? Where you forced to do certain
Yes,
things.
yeah, this,
Yeah, that's way different being forced to do something versus finding a passion and a love for something. Especially so I'm really talking about the American aspect of things here, because we have so many options and so many choices sometimes that if it's not something that really resonates with us internally, then we won't get to that mastery level in terms of where I can sit up all night and focus on this specific strategy, because one, it doesn't feel like work. It
what,
really it feels it feels like a calling, right? It feels like I can't, I'm compelled to do it. And that's one of the things that you have to find for yourself is what is it that you're compelled to do, and figure out how to master your life around that, right? It's like, okay, well, certain things I'm compelled to do certain things, so I make sure I put all my interest around the things that I love, right? And so that's something that you can do. And again, going back to the narrative piece, is it helps you to vet certain information if you have a passion for that specific field of knowledge. And if you don't, find someone that does and figure out, get the nooks and the crannies from them. And even not only that, is you don't necessarily have to trust them totally, but you can use them as a vetting mechanism for the kind of information you study. So instead of studying 300 pages, I can now narrow it down to 30, right? Or maybe not even 30, maybe I can narrow it down to 3, and I can identify the real nuggets of the piece of information. And again, I want to reiterate that not all information is worth knowing, because some of it
yeah.
is just garbage and some of it is just junk, and it'll just set you back or depress you.
Yeah, I'd say a lot of it to an individual is just not that valuable uh, when it comes to the grand scheme of things, and when it comes to somebody's individual life.
Yeah,
Before the internet, I mean, there's a lot of stuff I didn't know. A lot of
yeah,
people didn't know, but they had happy, healthy lives. A lot of people did, even without knowing half the stuff that's available to us at the tips of our fingers these days. Um, Man, when you was talking, I was thinking about oh my gosh, I forgot, man.
not
That's
talking about
crazy.
what specifically. Do you remember what I
Oh,
was talking about?
when you're talking about things that you have a calling for,
Yep.
things that call to you, it seems to be one good or one key indicator that helps somebody get an idea about what it is that really makes them happy and content
Yep.
and satisfied. Um, some people, it just depends. But yeah, that's one good indicator. And also, like you said, just getting out in the world and experimenting and experiencing a whole range of things when you're younger. As Jack Ma, when he said,
Yeah.
when you're in your 20s, you can do that.
Yep.
When you're 20s, you can go out, experiment, experience the world, be a little free. In your 30s, he talks about working for somebody, working in a company, and learning how to work in a corporation or work in collaboration. I think he talks about. He said in your 40s, he said, do what makes you happy and don't stop.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And that's where I am. I'm like, I care less about anything else. And again, it takes time to get there. It doesn't just happen overnight. It's and this goes back to a lot of figuring out where your passion is. For some people, is the most difficult thing you'll probably do, because there's so many variables in your life, and sometimes you may not even have come across what you really enjoy or love.
yeah,
Not everybody's that fortunate to where they figure it out by the time they're 10 years old, right? And
yeah.
so you want to give yourself some freedom to really think about it. And not only that, but interview people that know you. Interview people that it's like, okay, what is it about me that you think I like to do? It sounds like a stupid question, but for real, sometimes you have your own mental bias, or sometimes you have a blindness to the things that you have an affinity for, right? And
Sometimes,
so getting feedback from other people can actually help you, seek those things. For example, what do they call it? Like the career test. Like when you're in high school, you take a career test or even a personality test, right?
Yep.
Personality test. I remember years ago, I may have talked about it before, but like one of the first things that I took when I, was going to this one particular job, they do like when you work in a corporate environment, they'll actually give you like personality tests to see where you
Yep.
fit, to see where your bend is, and all of this kind of stuff. I mean, I remember I took this test and it was like 400 questions, and
Dang.
I realized what was behind it, because what they do is they ask you the same question in a
In
variety of
different
different
ways.
ways to make sure that you're not even lying or trying to game the system, right? Because by the time you get to question number
You don't remember.
100, it's
Yeah.
like I don't even care no more. I'm just gonna answer it, right? And so what they do is, they'll give you an assessment of like, okay, this is your personality type. These are the kinds of things you have an affinity to. And I remember specifically for me that my bend was toward, it was type A-ish toward entrepreneur, right? That was my bend in terms of the work environment. It's just the way I think. And so those kinds of things can actually help you as well. You want to make sure that if you are doing that, make sure that you answer it as honestly and truthful as possible, because you don't want to just try to game it and then you end up thinking you have a bend toward the wrong direction, right?
Yep.
So you want to make sure that you're focused on, things that pertain to you specifically, so that you can start getting an idea or an inkling of what you want as far as your outcome in life. Because at the end of the day, information, no information. At the end of the day, people, you're gonna die, right? And when you die, it's like, are you gonna be fulfilled or are you gonna live with regrets? And for me, when I think about my life's journey and all of this stuff, shout out to Chris Hudson, because every time I think about that, I think about him.
Like
But
that.
anyway, anytime I think about what I want for my life, of my my family and myself, it really always pertains to death. It's like, when I'm dead, or am I living enough to where if I die today, I'm good, right? And that's really what it boils down to. Getting money and all of that kind of stuff, it's not going to fulfill you the way you think it is. Trust me, it
Yep.
really won't. And so you want to make sure that you're doing something that's worthwhile while you're on this earth. And so going back to the whole narrative piece, make sure that you figure out what narrative that you want to live and leave behind. Go ahead.
And you brought it right back to where I was going. The other day, I was thinking about death.
Yeah.
Funny enough, and I was thinking about people's social media timelines after they die.
Yep.
And it's like, what story did you leave behind on
Yeah.
your timeline? And it's fun. It's just interesting how people still interact with their, dead people's timelines.
Yeah.
Just saying,
Yeah.
hey, I'm thinking about
That's
you,
a new
whatever.
phenomenon
It's,
for real.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just crazy, man. It's like, because sometimes I'd be like, I thought they were dead, and they'll be like, I go over and I'm like, oh, they are. But
Yeah. Somebody's
yeah,
taking on their personality in a sense. Yeah,
yeah,
I've seen that recently actually, and yeah, so that's kind of like where I keep going back to, especially now. The things I reflect on during the whole COVID 19 is I know a lot of people that have died,
yep,
and I know a lot of Black people specifically that have died from COVID, and and their family members and all of that. We had a relative that died today, as a matter of fact. And so it's just like those kinds of things really make me think, that, you don't want to get so caught up in the hustle and bustle of life that you forget what's pertinent. Because again, we talked about being prepared last week, right? This
yeah.
is the preparation time now. It's not later, it's now. Be prepared now for start preparing yourself for your untimely demise. And as far as I'm concerned, anytime I leave this earth is untimely for me,
That's
right?
it.
And so I want to make sure that I'm putting forth the kind of effort. And again, just going back to the book, the mastery book, has made me reflect and reevaluate some things, as I often do anyway. But it just made me get more resolute and more specific on what it is that I care about. because that's what really matters. What is it that you truly care about? I'm not talking about what somebody else has fed you to care about. I'm talking about what you care about, what resonates with you, what affinities do you have, what things do you think about, what passions do you have. And so that's what I think about for myself. And then not only that, but how do I cultivate that in my children and even my wife, right? How can I make sure that they're living in that same kind of paradigm also? So these are the things that, we're talking about narrative. Uh,
We,
don't let anybody define your narrative for you. That's what I'll
man, that's the main crux of our talk today is being aware of the um, those outside influences that are jockeying for position to be the main author of your story,
Yep.
and how, like you pointed out poignantly, how important it is that you approach life with a personal inner narrative that is powerful, resilient, and able to withstand the onslaught of propaganda and weaponized information that is
Yep.
constantly bombarding us. I keep coming back to the book Propaganda by Edward Bernays, just because it's like a real simple read, and it's real simple, and he just comes out and just plainly says a lot of things about um, how our society is structured in modern times, given that he was the nephew of
Sigmund Freud.
Sigmund Freud. Yeah, and his lineage and where he comes from. And so, yeah, I was thinking about whatever Bernays said earlier this week too, from the seed planted by the article that you sent me. And I was
Yep.
thinking about the comment he made about his driver and how he called him dumb. I think his name was Bill. I don't know if his name was Bill or not. He called him Dumb Bill or Dumb something like that.
Yeah.
Because this guy, he was a stand-up guy that came to work every day, did his thing, and worked hard and put his kids through school and all that kind of stuff. And he just said called him dumb. you know, so it just makes me think about how
Yeah. What's crazy about that is it's almost what Inception, right? You
yes,
start planting those seeds, and Inception is a movie by with Leonardo DiCaprio and some others. But again, it's really about planting an idea. That's the whole concept of Inception. Is like once you plant an idea, then it'll grow on its own, right?
oh man,
And and so even going back to Errol Bernays and Charles Duhigg, I bring them up all the time. Uh, they talk about how you can actually change and modify other people's behavior by doing that very thing, by just implanting thoughts. Just something like if I give him, hey, big strong Kev, I call him that all the time. When he comes around me, he's over a period of time, he's going to change his posture. He's going to change the way he interacts with me. It's just like, black people do it naturally, but we don't realize. It's like, what's going on, cat daddy? We hype people up, and they get like, but again, over time, they start personifying those very traits that you place on them. So be very aware of the narrative that somebody else places on you.
That the words that people.
Yes, they're very powerful. For example, in the talk the Davos talk, right? There was a lady there. She's a singer, and she talked about she's from I forgot what country she's from. I can't remember. Anyway, yeah, I'll pull her up real quick. This lady right here, I don't know her name. This lady right here. Yeah, and she talked about like she's a singer, and she talked about when she would sing from her country, they would label her unnice things, right? They would call her because she's older, as you can tell, they would call her a variety of names, and so she went home and she talked to her grandmother, and her grandmother was like, "Listen, does do you like what you do?" And she's like, "Yeah," she said, "Do we support you?" Yeah, and she's like, "Yeah." She said, "Don't worry about what anybody else tells you because they can't. You don't want them to dictate." I'm paraphrasing here, and I'm probably might be paraphrasing it wrong, but the essence of it is don't let other people dictate to you who you are or what you are. That's for you to decide. And so, going back to the whole narrative piece, be careful of who dictates to you what you are and who you are. And it may be your own family members. Go ahead, bro.
Yeah, well, I was going to say, you know, that in mind, or in tandem with making sure you have a community, a circle of loved ones who
Yep.
do have a voice in your life, and whose words do have some weight in your life. So just looking at, when it comes to cultivating your personal narrative, when it comes to your relationships, just looking out for making room for those who do speak positive, uh, inspiring, motivating um, things, loving things in your life versus the opposite, like you were pointing out with the singer. So cultivating those relationships and growing them, that's very important when it
Yep.
comes to your personal narrative, because like it or not, there are people in your life that are shaping your story as you move along. Some of us, the beginning of our stories, that we didn't come out good, but when you come to a point of maturity or a point of awareness,
Yep.
then it's up to each and every one of us to take our own lives by the reins and start dictating ourselves with relation to our heavenly Father. With relation
Yep.
to my shirt says just God. You know, with relationship with Him, allowing Him to inspire and move and motivate and help author your life. I got to put that in there for
Oh
somebody
yeah.
comments. Well, you didn't say
Yeah.
anything about that.
You are a master of your own destiny.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
but
yeah.
but here's the thing. Well, you kind of are really because you have free reign. And so not
You
only
have free reign to submit and subjugate yourself.
yeah, and
Yeah.
so on top of letting other people dictate to you who you are and repeating words to you, you can actually do the same thing to yourself. And so because the person that came to my mind is of course David Goggins.
Mhm.
Talking about bad beginnings and how he changed the narrative of his own life,
Yeah.
of how he took control, to become an absolute beastly monster and all things physical. He talks about how he would talk to himself on a consistent and daily basis to change his mindset. He went from being soft to, he calls himself soft and weak to being, he was like, you know what, I'm going to be the hardest man alive. And he literally told him, he still tells himself that every day, and that's his pursuit. He's like, I don't care. He said, if it hurts, I want to do more of it, kind of stuff. And and it's really, you basically train your own thinking. And it's the whole what is Pavlov dog thing? What is that called? Uh I can't even, classical conditioning, right? You
Yeah.
can classical condition yourself. And this is what people don't take advantage of. I can program myself to be who I want to be. Again, that's why I talk about figuring out what your passion is, what your life's calling is. To use Robert Greene's word, when you look up vocation, originally it was a biblical term talking about, your life's calling, what you're called and purpose to do. If you can discover what your true vocation is, then you can classically condition yourself to become and manifest into whoever it is you want to be. However, you have to be very finite about it because, again, that window is very small. That window is extremely small, and not everybody is going to reach it because very few people do, to be honest. And
Yep.
so that's the thing, and that's the reality of some of these narratives. Is you have to be so, I guess, almost stubborn to ignore the world to follow it because everything around you is going to be whispering the opposite to you. And that's the most difficult part of it, is if you let other people dictate to you. And again, the narrative, you look at the news, I'm always talking about Black people. Always talking to Black people. You look at the news on how you're portrayed and how things are, blasted out about you, then you will always feel inferior, even if you don't even realize it. You'll have an inferiority complex. You'll make excuses for other people's treatment of you. And so you have to always reinforce, uh, a positive narrative about yourself, a positive narrative about your outcome. And also, not only that, a willingness to make the choices that aren't easy to make. And that's the most difficult part, is sometimes, not all the time, but making those, the more you do it, the easier it becomes, but making those choices that are counterculture, that are counter whatever, because not everybody is going to understand it in later, hindsight is 2020. But when you're going through stuff, people are gonna think you're making stupid decisions, dumb decisions. But if you know what's best for you, if you know what your true calling and your true purpose is, then it really, over time, you'll care less and less about the naysayers and those kinds of things that'll stop you from going towards your purpose.
Man, is anybody on? On the thread?
Yeah, nobody's made any comments. Yeah, if you have any questions or comments, you're always free to make a comment or ask a question or whatever in regards to what we're saying. If you think we're saying something wrong, let us know.
Yep.
I'm a big boy. Kevin's a big boy, and we can take it. But again, it's just those kinds of things. Just be careful of the narrative. Make sure that the best narrative you hear about yourself every day is from yourself. To be honest, sometimes you just gotta. That's what the whole mantras are. Even in the Bible, he gave them phylacteries, so that they could read and
remember,
govern themselves according to the law. But not only that, but it the scriptures tell them who they are and whose they are, their purpose, and all of that kind of stuff, which makes them stronger. So again, you gotta, he called it girding up the loins of your mind, right? You gotta make strong the stability of your mind. That's how the scriptures worded. Yep. So you want to make sure that again, you're not weak in terms of the way you think, and in the terms of especially the way you think about yourself.
Man, when you brought up the Bible, I was thinking of I've been listening to a lot of conversation about dreams and visions.
Okay.
From a biblical perspective, and how in the ancient world, dreams and visions were seen as glimpses or windows into the real reality, the ultimate reality, and how throughout the Bible, various you'll see various people have dreams and visions that are not only life changing, but culture, changing for the culture and the people involved at that time. To the point to where it's, people today still read, think, and meditate and talk about some of the dreams and visions that people in the Bible had. And one of the words that keeps coming up is apocalypse.
Yeah.
And I've been thinking, just thinking about now and the times that we're in, and how in our culture that word has come up, and how important it is that we have discernment or understanding as far as that narrative and what that really means as far as apocalypse, and how it can relate to the times that we are experiencing right now, and how that will affect how you act. Whether what you believe about the times that we're in and the information that we take in is going to affect how we act and how we respond. Again, I've made comment in past shows about how some people believe certain aspects of the narratives that's been put out now, and to me, it's just fantastic. Like, wow, that's how behaviors have changed in such a short time, and how to the point of behaviors, but also attitudes, and how things are being exposed, and just I don't know, man. It's just like I don't know. And I'm referencing to some of the things I see on people's timelines and stuff on social media.
I already know you're going. Yep.
You know where I'm going?
Yep.
It's just like, oh man, it's like I really want to kind of just get off, but I can't, because I'm like a moth to the flame.
And so for me, the way I look at it, and that's why I do get off. I do disconnect. I usually don't get on. Like I got on early today, so me seeing the whole Coinda thing was by accident, because I had a meeting and I was communicating with the person through Messenger, and so I just happened to see that. But anyway, I typically try to push off when I get online later and later every day, to some days where I don't get on at all. But with that said, what I see, I don't know, it just feels like right now is just a time of manipulation. And it's like, okay, how far can we push things? Kind of, from again, this is just my own viewpoint, vantage point.
Yeah.
And it's like, because like you said, on one hand, you see people, I don't know, I have a large variety of the types of friends. I'll put it that way, in terms of walks of life and all of that. Yeah, so I got all kinds on my friends list, so to speak. And so it's again, going back to this whole narrative piece, I see people, it just feels like somebody's flipping switches in their head. Because in one hand, they'll be arguing one thing, and then like the next day they'll be on some completely the opposite direction, talking about as if everything they said previously never existed. And so it's real, yeah, it's just real interesting. I think some of that is fear. The way you manipulate people is through fear. It's through the senses kind of thing, and fear is definitely a big motivator for a lot of people. And then I don't know, it's just real. It's just strange. I won't even say it's interesting. A lot of it is just really strange. And when you talk to some people, I talk to them personally, not online or anything like that. But when you talk to them and you point out some of the things, I'll call it hypocrisies, and it's just like they never saw it. They never saw that their post or that the way that they talked about stuff was hypocritical to the argument that they made previously. And it's just, yeah, it's just real different. So I don't even know where I'm going. It's just strange, man.
Well, we all have those those plot holes in our narratives.
Yeah.
it takes a Leif to come say, "Hey, you got a plot hole right there." Like, no, this is seamless, man. What are you talking about?
Yeah.
No plot hole here.
So I'm sure I've had some plot holes as well, but yeah, it's very extreme. It's very strange. And here's what's funny. I looked at the Darren Brown is called Sacrifice. I watched that again recently, and Darren Brown Sacrifice is Darren Brown. He's a mentalist. Yeah, he's a mentalist. It's on Netflix. It's been there for several years now. It came out a couple years. It came out in 2018. And the whole idea is, can you get somebody to sacrifice their life for a complete stranger? And wow. So like I always tell people to look at it because I don't want to necessarily talk about it, but I'll talk about it without giving the plot, without giving the ending away, because the plot is made known up front. The plot is literally that. Can I get somebody that may even be a racist to sacrifice their life for somebody who they're a racist to, in a sense, right? And this particular dude, he didn't like Hispanic. He was a whole immigration thing, against immigrants, that kind of stuff. And then at the end, it came down to, will he sacrifice his life to save this man? He was the only person on the show that didn't know the show was going on, kind of stuff.
Right? Oh, okay. Yeah.
And so just thinking about that and how the cues, and again, I admonish everybody to watch it, because when we're talking about narrative here, we're talking about the way narratives manipulate you.
He's doing exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, that whole show was literally about manipulating somebody. The entire show, and it's only like maybe an hour long. But if you watch it, it'll give you some insight into how easily it is to change somebody's persona through constant information. So it's not easy, but you can see how easy it is if you have the distribution to constantly give somebody a narrative.
If you plan it out, then it's possible.
Yeah,
just like a behavioral technician or behavior engineer.
Yep. And so you have to be very, I always watch things like that just to see what others are doing to me, right? I look at it from a perspective of like, okay, what things are influencing me that I'm unaware of? And when
everybody's getting it.
Yeah, everybody is. Even the people that put it out, they get caught up in it, literally. And so that's the crazy part of it. And so looking at these things give you some insight in terms of how again, it's classical conditioning is definitely a part of it. You see a lot of the bombardment of information, and not only that, but you cater to people's emotions. It's all of these things, and basically you get to see a master class on all the stuff that Darren Brown studies to manipulate people. He has another show called The Push, and it's different people, and that's pretty much getting people to see if they'll actually kill somebody or if they'll hide it. Yeah, that's the whole push. It's like, okay, we'll murder somebody, and when you become, and they try to compel you to become an accomplice in that murder, and it's like that's multiple shows, and even watching that and how that's utilized to manipulate people. And it's very scary, especially when you talk about population control and all of these things, where you think this pandemic is real, where do you think it's planned, where you think it's fake. Regardless of how you feel about what's happening, because something is happening, whether you want to acknowledge it or not.
You gotta run with the herd.
Dying. Yeah, people are dying, whether you want to acknowledge it or not. And what they're dying of could be up in the air, who knows, but people are dying. So it's not enough just to dismiss it. It's not enough to come up with a crazy theory and have no remedy, right? And so anyway, going back to these shows, you get to see all of these different tactics, all of these different techniques. And what I would advise anybody to do is look at that, and then look at the daily content that you take in and see how that's affecting you. Because 9 times out of 10, it is, we say it all the time, every piece of media, even this one right here, is propaganda, is compelling you to think a certain way. We're trying to compel you to think about narrative. Other media, they may be selling they may be showing cartoons, but they're selling Coca-Cola or something like that, right? So be careful of the misdirection and the redirects. Anyway, that's it.
That's it. That's all I got.
All right. Wrap us up.
Cool. Two shot guys in the mic. Jay, Kev, like Taylor here, having a conversation about narrative and how important it is to, vet and take the time to research and think about what you're thinking about. Think about the information that is being downloaded into us on a regular basis, so that we can defend ourselves and have our guards up and be aware and just realizing what's going on so that we can make decisions that's best for us and our families versus the corporation's bottom line or the government's tax receipt. I don't know. Make decisions that's best for us first, for you and your family, so that you all live happy, healthy, wealthy, and wise. But that's all I got for now.
And always remember that you are the value of this earth. Money is nothing without people.
Yep.
So, all right. Peace out, everybody.
Peace out.